Hey everybody, welcome back to Video So Terry got a brand new series starting today, which I'm calling Is That an Analog in Your Pocket, or Are You Just Happy to See Me? Because after 13 months of ordering an Analogue Pocket and a dock, it has finally arrived. I basically almost forgot I had ordered this for about 8 months. But it's here, and what I'm going to do today is an unboxing, an initial review, and a setup guide, because I know a lot of you are going to be getting your Analogue Pocket very shortly, and there are a lot of steps to get it going. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But if you're new to the channel and just here for Pocket, this is a perspective series I am trying out. If there's interest in these sort of tutorials, I'll keep them going with core reviews and other setup guides. If you're familiar with the channel, well, we got another FPGA device, and if you want to see more, just leave me a comment down below. Well, the Pocket obviously took a very long time to arrive, about 13 months, and these things are about as rare as hen's teeth, but I'm going to open up mine on camera and talk about it. And I will say that I'm slightly less excited as when I ordered it, but I'm glad it has arrived. It just seems like Analogue definitely has a back order going on, and no judgments there. I get it, it's a popular product. And if you're just here because you got a Pocket and you need a setup guide, go to minute 656. That will be where I start showing you guys how to add update scripts, updating the firmware, adding arcade games, as well as console, handheld, and computer games. Right off the top, you can definitely tell this is a premium product and designed to be so, because the packaging through to the actual Analogue Pocket is displayed nicely, and the packaging has that nice Apple vibe going on. It is a really nice looking device. We're going to talk about the form factor, what comes in the box, how the control feels, everything like that before we actually get to the setup guide. You'll see underneath the Pocket itself, you get a USB-C to USB-C cable, and this little pouch with a quick start guide and a sticker that is made with the most industrious glue I have ever seen. It was near impossible to actually get into this thing. Now obviously off the top, the form factor is 100% inspired by the Game Boy and the Game Boy Pocket and Color specifically. It's kind of an amalgam of all three of those families, obviously much thinner than the original Game Boy. And I know YouTube loves a good peel, so let's peel this little protective layer off the screen. And I will say, once we actually get to the screen quality, it is quite exceptional, high marks for that. But they do a good job protecting this whole thing around when it comes out, and you can just peel to your heart's content. I'm never quite sure why people love the peel so much. Leave me a comment down below and tell me if you know why, because honestly, I kind of just rip them off and never think of it. So on the control front, you get a D-pad, you get these 4 face buttons here, as well as different menu buttons that are mostly going to be used within the Analogue OS menus when you're playing the game. And I will say, as far as all of the controls are concerned, and I have played this for about a week before I did the video, they are fine. They are not great, they are not bad, they are perfectly serviceable. I've definitely used a lot better, I've definitely used a lot worse. The shoulder buttons, I understand based on the form factor where they fit. They feel totally fine as well, maybe a little bit spongy and not the most precise thing ever, but honestly in a form factor like this I still give them high marks. The button placement is good, it does work for all games, there really isn't anything to say about it. If you're expecting this to feel like an actual controller, it's not going to, but pretty much every handheld is going to be the same way. Even the Steam Deck, which I love, it's not really going to be an actual controller in your hand, it's just kind of how that space works. And obviously you'll see on the back there's a cart slot. I'm never going to use that. I'm just using this for OpenFPGA. Now around the side there's going to be a micro SD card slot. You're going to have a micro SD card to update the firmware and do anything in this tutorial. I definitely recommend you get one. I'll leave a link to Amazon below. On the other side, you're going to get your volume rockers up and down, and this big green button here is going to be your power switch. I like the color, it fits the design, high marks for that. Now on the bottom we have some fun ports. We have a link cable port that looks just exactly like it should. We have the USB-C, which is going to be for power in, as well as the dock, and a headphone jack. And I kind of wish the headphone jack was up at the top. That's just me, I never love it coming from the bottom, but hey, I understand space-wise that is a little bit of a thing that you need to deal with. Now in the Pocket box itself, you're going to get this USB-C to USB-C cable, which is a nice addition, and it does feel like a quality cable. Pretty much any USB-C cable is pretty decent these days. And of course you get a nice packet of silica gel too. It says not to eat it, but honestly, don't tell me what to do, Analogue, I might be hungry. And inside of this, you're going to get a little QR code for the quick start guide, as well as some stickers. But again, I don't know what glue they used on that pouch. It was near impossible for me to get into that without just basically Wolverining into the package in and of itself. Now let's talk about the dock before we get over to the actual setup guide. I do recommend a dock if you're at all interested in playing this on your television, because it's the only dock that seems to work with the Pocket. I'm curious if we're going to see some aftermarket devices, but inside the box you get the dock, you get a wall wart to USB-C, which you do not get with Analogue Pocket if you don't buy the dock, but pretty much any charger will work. I used my iPhone charger and it was great. And you get 2 cables as well as another pouch, which I'm not going to open up because why? We've already shown you one. Let's get the box out of the way and see what else is going on here. The dock is really nice. It's heavy. It's got some nice weight to it with a rubber bottom, and it's not going to slide around. And you have the USB-C port that's going to connect your dock in. But the dock is only as good as the ports that are around the back, so let's take a look and see what we have. You're going to see we have two USB-A ports, and you can do hardwired controllers in through there. You're going to have a USB-C power adapter so you can keep the dock working and your Analogue Pocket charged at the same time. And of course, you're going to have an HDMI port because it's not going to be much of a signal on a TV without that. And if you guys want to see a video on wireless controllers, just let me know down below. I want to do that as a part 2 if this does well. The only thing about the dock that I don't love is the shallow recess as to where the pocket sits. Now you want to be careful with this because if you move the pocket even ever so slightly forward or backward against that little bar there, and I swear they took inspiration from an Atari Jaguar cartridge, you can see that there is a lot of motion in there. I wish it was either slightly canted back or that recess was slightly deeper. That way I would know that that torque on the port wouldn't be as much. So just be slightly careful when you have this thing docked. Don't leave it around kids or animals. You should be fine. And inside of the dock box, you're going to get a couple more things. You're going to get that wall wart for USB-C that you can plug into the back of the dock. That way it runs on your TV and charges your pocket. But I honestly use my iPhone charger I had a spare because that has a higher power delivery, so it just charges everything a little bit faster. And you get a HDMI cable, you probably already have a dozen of those sitting around, and you get another USB-C to USB-C cable. And the length is relatively good on this. You're not going to be able to put it 10 feet away from your television. And honestly, like I said, I've got a box of HDMI cords that's probably bursting at the seams, like 20 or 30 in there. So honestly, use whatever you want. The cable is totally fine. Now when we actually get into the Analogue Pocket itself and turn it on, 10 out of 10 high marks for the quality of the screen. The resolution, the DPI, everything about this is just a banger. I've got nothing bad to say about the form factor, and I absolutely have nothing bad to say about the screen itself. It is just spectacular, but right now without a cartridge, it does absolutely nothing. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is update the firmware. I just received mine and the firmware is old. I'll leave a link below. You'll see here the date of the most recent firmware, and if you click download, it will download to your downloads folder. If you want to see what's new in the operating system, you can go to the firmware notes and see all of the different changes, but I'm assuming yours is probably going to be out of date, out of box too. And this is why we need that micro SD card. I recommend 256 gigabytes at the minimum, but I think a 512 would be a nice size. It can be formatted in either FAT32 or exFAT, but generally if you buy a new card, it's probably going to come in exFAT format. But when you plug the card in, if you just right click on the correct drive indicator letter and hit properties, you will see what the file system is. If it says FAT32 or exFAT, you're fine. If it says anything different, we need to reformat the card, or if you're reusing one. If you want to reformat the card, right click on the drive letter, hit format, and then you can select your file type in there, and by default it's exFAT. Now pay attention to the drive letter. People do this every single time I show them how to format something. If you delete your family's photos, it is not my fault. Don't yell at me down below. But now that we have that card, we're just going to copy that Pocket firmware we downloaded, the .bin, onto the root of the SD card. No folderization whatsoever. Once that is copied over, you can eject the SD card out of your computer, and what we're going to do is put that into the Pocket. You'll see right here, it is quite small. Putting in a micro SD card is always a little bit of a pain in the butt, but you will see that this port on the side, it is a really nice design because the card basically goes immediately flush to the plastic housing and just sits in there. A lot of times you need to use your fingernail to pop it in. But once you have the new firmware bin on the card and you power up your Pocket, it will automatically start updating your Pocket. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes, and once you see that percentage indicator hit 100, it's going to bring you to the quick start guide. It'll give you a tutorial on what buttons do if you so want to, and then it makes you set the date and time and agree to the end user license agreement. You could read it if you want. Nobody ever does. Who knows what's in there? Maybe I just sold them my soul to Analogue. Doesn't really matter to me, to be honest with you. I'm not doing much with it. But you will see here, if you just take a look at the About page, OS version 1.1, we are updated and ready to go. But that doesn't mean we have anything on the Pocket to play yet. Pocket Updater Utility right here by Matt Pinella was recommended to me by Pixel Cherry Ninja. He does a lot of stuff with the Analogue Pocket, and I will say this update script is absolutely perfect. It does everything you need and nothing more. If you scroll down, there's going to be a README here that explains what it does, and there will also be instructions on the latest release. You want to make sure you get the updated version. And if you want to know what every single individual setting does, at the bottom of the GitHub page, it will show you all of the different options and how you can articulate them. I will leave a link to this in the description below as well. But all we do is download the newest build. You'd have to pick your operating system. My tutorials are predicated on using Windows, but if you have Mac or Linux, they are available to you as well. And just be aware they are zipped, so when you download this updater, you're going to have to unzip it. Don't put it onto the SD card as a zip or it's not going to work. From there, you'll see a folder, Pocket Updater Windows. Double click that and we're going to copy the executable of this over to the root directory of the SD card again. Once you put the SD card in for the firmware, it's going to set that card up and you'll have all these folders. But if you just run Pocket Updater from the root directory of your micro SD card for Pocket, this will start to run with a nice little nod to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. You can select whatever option you want, but when you're initially setting up, choose 0. It's going to do Update All, and this is going to take about 15 to 30 minutes depending on the repository speed and depending on the speed of your internet. If anything goes wrong, you'll get a little error message below. Mine didn't bring over the Game Boy Advance BIOS, I did that manually, but you'll see everything that happened. This takes care of all of the arcade side, all of the core update sides. It's just not going to add any console games. So if you go over to Arcade after running that update script, you can see all of the different cores it has brought down along with the files to run them. And if you want to see something like Hotego CPS1, that's going to be under Arcade Multi. It doesn't just show up in Arcade. But if you pick CPS1 and hit run, all the games the update script just installed cores and files for will be right here ready to play. And that's just a great thing. And I did this in real time. I shot the tutorial while I also did this for the first time. That way I could understand what it would be like when you do it for the first time. And it was all very streamlined, and that's always a great thing, because once you get into the OpenFPGA stuff and start manually updating things, it becomes an open ecosystem versus Analogue Pocket, just using the cartridge slot, which is plug and play ready to go. Now, depending on the core you're using, when you hit the analog button, you're going to pull the menu up and there's going to be a core settings menu. This is going to be different depending on what arcade game you're playing, depending on what handheld, computer, or console core you are playing. But definitely go in here, navigate around, and if you want guides on individual cores and how best to set them up and maybe some best games to play, just leave me a comment down below and I'll start working on those. But honestly, Hotego makes great cores. I played Final Fight a ton of different ways. I've got an original arcade board. I've been playing this on Mr. as well, and on Analogue Pocket here, it's working exactly as you would expect, and that's because Hotego and his team are excellent FPGA developers. Now, I'm way more from the Mr. ecosystem, and I am new to Analogue Pocket, but I did want to talk about it, and I am excited for it, because any way that people get to play classic games, I am just 100% happy for. And don't forget, it's not just arcade, you can do console stuff as well. But that is a completely different way to get your games over to the Pocket, so we have to go through that section of the tutorial. Now, if you take a look at all of these games here, which I do legally own if you're going to ask, they are for different consoles. We have PC Engine, we have Game Boy Advance, we have Super Nintendo, and we have Sega Genesis. And that Sega Genesis is a Japanese ROM. I just want to mention that because it will be important in just a moment. All you need to do is come over to your micro SD card and you're going to see a folder marked assets. Don't go into cores. It is labeled as what is in there, but those are just the core files. I'm sure someone's going to make that mistake. If you go into assets, you're going to see a folder for every single arcade core, console core, computer core, and handheld that exists on your Pocket right now. If I want to put that PC Engine Hue card in, it's going to go into PCE, and every game is going to go into common. PCE CD is for CDs. I will do that in a future video. If I want to have Game Boy Advance, I navigate back over to the assets folder, and I'm going to go to GBA. That's going to stand for Game Boy Advance, and again, you just put the games in the common folder. This is where you're going to put all of your games or OpenFPGA cores that you want to play. And just be aware, there's not going to be two different folders for two different systems that are the same. Sega Genesis is also the Sega Mega Drive in Japan, but we're going to put this Japanese ROM in the Genesis folder. That's where we want to have it. And when you come back into the operating system manual, if you want a console core, go to console. If you want handheld core, you go to handheld. They are portioned off. And if we go to Game Boy Advance, you're going to see that we're able to launch into Castlevania, no big deal whatsoever. I just put one game on for this example, but you'll have a list of whatever you bring over, and as long as you've set everything up correctly and put the games in the appropriate folder, you're going to get this launching into the game. It is not that hard, just follow the tutorial and you're going to be good to go, but I still have more stuff to show you, so don't tune out quite yet. And some cores, not all of them, are also going to have save states. If save states are available, this option will be darkened. If it's grayed out, it doesn't exist. If you hold down the analog button on the face of the Pocket and you push up, you're going to do a save state. How that works, if you've never seen them before, is this is basically going to rewind the game at that instruction the CPU is dealing with when you saved it. If you go back into memory screenshots, there's going to be one thing, but if you go back to save states and you go ahead and hit the accept button, you can load the state, and you're going to see that the game rewinds to exactly where you were. Just remember, not every single core has save states. Now if you see a number next to the system like Sega Genesis here, that means there's more than one available core you can run. If you go to change core, you're going to have options on what you want to default as, and if I do videos specifically on cores, I will talk about the differences between the two cores in them. But just remember, if you see that number, there's more than one way to run the system. And I will say Sega Genesis Splatterhouse Part 2 here, one of my favorite games on the system, is running exactly as I would expect it to with original hardware, whether it was Mr. FPGA or Analogue Pocket as well. It just 100% works, and I love to see it. And as a lazy pickup shot from my bedroom, when you plug your Pocket into the dock with that new firmware, the dock will update as well based on that firmware that you just downloaded. Wait for it till you get a signal. But if you follow everything in this video, you're going to get your Pocket set up, you're going to get all those arcade cores, you're going to get all your cores updated, and everything ready to run under OpenFPGA. All you need to do is add your games. But if you have any questions, leave them down below. I'm happy to answer each and every one of them. And if you do want to see more Analogue Pocket videos, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you want to see, because this is either going to become a staple series for the channel, or I'll do two more, put the Pocket in my desk and play it when I feel like it. Short of that, thanks so much for watching, guys. Maybe we'll see more Pocket soon, but I'll have videos throughout the week. Bye bye.